it wasn't obvious by now, I am a huge fan of the Fire Emblem series, but this love for the series only came about recently. I mean, I knew about Fire Emblem since the days of Smash Bros. Melee, and I played through Sacred Stones a few times and had lots of fun, but I never fell in love with the series. The years went by and I never played another Fire Emblem game again, until one time in 2012, when I needed a new game to play, and everyone was going crazy about Fire Emblem Awakening. I thought to myself, surely this game can't be that good, but I decided to pick it up anyway. And what I discovered is that I had never been more wrong. I mean, good God, did this game leave one hell of an impression on me. Fire Emblem Awakening completely blew me out of the water. It was thanks to this game that I fell in love with the series and got to experience gems such as Fire Emblem 7 and Path of Radiance. Thanks to Fire Emblem Awakening, the series was saved from permanent cancellation, and it gave the guys at Intelligent Systems a chance to keep the steam rolling and make more entries in this fantastic series with Fire Emblem Fates. Fire Emblem Awakening is my favourite game in the Fire Emblem series, and my favourite game on the 3DS. I mean, I love this game so much that it is my favourite RPG of all time. Like with every Fire Emblem game, the strongest point of the game is, of course, the characters. Fire Emblem Awakening is an interesting case when it comes to the characters, since I find some of the main characters like Chrom, Frederick and Sayri good characters, but nothing compared to the likes of Leewood, Lynn or Erica. And the villains in this game really sucked and were really uninteresting, especially compared to the likes of Sephiroth, Lion and the motherfucking Black Knight. But the mercenary team, or as the game calls them, Shepherds, is by far my favourite team in the entire series. The Shepherds consist of some of the most useful, interesting, funny and downright badass characters in the Fire Emblem series, and this countdown is dedicated to who I think are the 10 best of them, requested by the YouTube user Stephen Bentley. Now I need to clear one or two things up before we get started. Firstly, like with my top 10 Fire Emblem classes, I'll be choosing these characters based not only on their usefulness on the battlefield, but also their personality and backstory, so characters that don't excel in both categories won't be on here. The other point is that none of the DLC characters in the past Fire Emblem games will be on this list, since they're essentially generic units with really high stats, and aren't part of Fire Emblem Awakening's story. Finally, if you've seen my top 10 Fire Emblem class video, then it should be easy to guess which characters are going to be on here. But anyway, with that cleared up, it's time to tip the scales! I am vengeance. I am the knight. I am Jerome. Wait, what? I thought this countdown was about Fire Emblem, not Batman. Regardless, anyone who's played Fire Emblem Awakening would understand why I'd make that type of joke, since Jerome in terms of both personality and backstory is pretty much Batman, only with less bats and more wyverns and time travel. Jerome's backstory goes into that since his mother and father died when he was young, and the only thing they left him was CRASHX500's wyvern, Jerome has decided to distance himself from others so they wouldn't have to suffer the loss of a loved one again, and went back in time to change the past without help of any other people. Being the son of CRASHX500, Jerome is the only other wyvern knight in Awakening, and he is one hell of an awesome one. Being a wyvern knight, Jerome is really powerful and has very high defense. He was also rather fast and has good skill, making him ideal for dealing with difficult enemies as well as holding down or blocking points. His resistance sucks however, so don't let him near any mages. By the time I upgraded Jerome into a Wyvern Lord, his base damage was so damn high that he was taking out most if not all units in a single strike. I'm serious, this guy could deal 46 damage like it was nothing. I will admit though, recruiting and training Jerome can be a bit of a hassle since the chapter where you can recruit him has a lot of high level units, and your units have to pretty much be at the same level, and by that point it's safe to assume that you're nearing the end of the game, and training Jerome is pretty much impossible unless you decide to grind skirmishes or reeking boxes on the world map. When diving into his character, at face value he's pretty much Fire Emblem's answer to Batman, since he's cold, bitter, very serious, gruff and refuses to get close to others, which is why he wears that mask. By supporting with Jerome, it turns out that he's actually rather shy and sensitive. He even refers to his wyvern as Minervikins, and the reason for him distancing himself from others is that he doesn't want to go through the pain of losing the ones he's loved again. Despite Jerome being an obvious inspiration by the Dark Knight, he was one of the strongest and coolest units in Awakening, as well as being one of the most sympathetic and serious characters. Man, he really is Batman! One thing I loved about Fire Emblem Awakening is that it's one of the few Fire Emblem games that gave you access to Dark Mages early on. Being my fourth favourite Fire Emblem class, this was just awesome since Dark Mages and other Fire Emblem games aren't usually playable until at least midway through the game, or they're sometimes non-existent. So being able to use no less than 2 Dark Mages early on was a real treat, and number 9 on this list is definitely not your typical Dark Mage. Now, when most people think of dark mages, they think of death, destruction, torture, being really cruel and sadistic, and downright evil. But for some reason, this dark mage is just so huggable and lovable that he's the only person in history that can say, "I'm gonna kill you!" and make it sound cute. Yep, that's right. It's Henry. Man, talk about an out-of-place character. Henry couldn't be less of a typical dark mage if he tried. I mean, Henry is nothing like any other dark mages in Fire Emblem. He's cheerful, he's friendly, very upbeat and optimistic, always laughing and making jokes, even when things like blood and gore. Henry's like an adorable killer bunny rabbit. While it may seem strange for a character like this to have these traits, I find it rather refreshing, and it makes Henry one of the most entertaining and fun characters in the game. His support conversations, while not exactly deep or particularly moving, are a ton of fun to read, and Henry's just downright delightful. Gameplay-wise, Henry pretty much takes the fundamentals of a dark mage class to the extreme, for both better and worse. What's good about this is Henry is an absolute monster when given the right tone. I mean, holy crap, did Henry really do some damage with tones like Nosferatu and Ruin. And because of this, Henry was a very viable trump card to either take down a strong unit or get others out of a sticky situation. What's bad about this is that some of his base stats are very poor, and as such can be taken down rather easily by units with a decent level of resistance, and Henry doesn't do well when using regular tone, since he can't capitalize on his best attributes, but rather is stuck with his glaring weaknesses. Henry is quite the wild card in terms of personality and use on the battlefield, and he's a very wacky and off-the-walls character who's loads of fun, but not particularly deep or developed. And he isn't too consistent or reliable, but when used correctly, he can be the enemy's worst nightmare, and one character I'll always look forward to using. One of the interesting additions in Fire Emblem Awakening was the second seal system. This new mechanic could allow characters to reclass into entirely different units or classes. For instance, you could reclass a thief into a cavalier, a cleric into a sniper, a warrior into a weapon lord, etc. I have a split on the second seal system. I feel changing the class the character is set with from the beginning kind of takes away some of their identity, and this system can be abused to the point in which you could have a maxed out character in every single stat possible and completely break the game. On the other hand, I like being able to reclass characters into units more to your preference, which adds a lot of replayability to the game, and it can really benefit some of the weaker units. Now, during my playthrough of Awakening, I only used the second source system on a very small amount of characters, but the one who benefited from the most was, without question, Cordelia. This may strike some of you as odd, seeing how in my last years I placed BlazingKnights as the second best class of Fire Emblem. So you might be wondering, why did I reclass Cordelia? Well, I'll share my 2 cents on that in a minute. First, let's talk about Cordelia herself. Cordelia is seen by her peers as a personification of perfection, a figure of both valor and beauty.
Delicate as an orchid, fair as a cherry blossom, the personification of feminine grace, and a dude.
Well, aside from the last one, Cordelia matched those descriptions to a T. She's smart, kind, a valiant soldier, wise, beautiful, fun, caring, honest. Honestly, if we're going to list all the positives about Cordelia, we're going to be here for a while. This is also reflected in her personality, since she doesn't like to be seen as average at anything, and works to become perfect at everything she does. What's odd though is that she hates being referred to as either perfect or flawless, which means if she's watching this, I'm in big trouble. On the gameplay front, Cordelia is a very potent and powerful Pegasus Knight, since she has very high levels of attack, which helps to cover one of the Pegasus Knight's biggest weaknesses, and is a very well-rounded and reliable unit. So why did they reclass her? See, the thing is, Sumia was always my main Falcon Knight, who was able to pretty much do everything. I didn't really need another one because of this. It did notice, however, that I didn't have a good mercenary on my team. Yeah, I did not use Gregor, and so I reclassed her into said class, and holy crap did she get good! If Cordelia was good before, she was great now. Cordelia became devastatingly strong and had really high evasion, and she was able to learn some really awesome skills like Soul. While I feel the second seal system wasn't properly implemented and it's one of the most broken mechanics in the series, Cordelia more than benefited from using it, and really surprised with just how good she became. I guess what they say is true. She is flawless. Because of how the story unfolds in Fire Emblem Awakening, a lot of characters that come back in the future are often rather serious, cold, or nervous in terms of personality. This makes sense given that they all lost their parents and live in a world filled with war and terror, and a lot of the early support conversations show the characters trying to distance themselves from their parents, either out of not wanting to become too emotionally attached or not being able to come to terms with seeing their mother and father again. I already brought up how Jerome stays as far away from people as possible. Na acts vastly more mature than her mother, and often scolds her for being so childlike, and as for Severa, well, that bitch is a straight up tsundere. Not all the children are like this, and some are rather run-of-the-mill, and all surprisingly upbeat. And number 7 on this list is so cheerful and bubbly that she practically sneezes petals. Yep, it's Cynthia. Cynthia certainly does stand out from the other children in Fire Emblem Awakening. Unlike the majority of the group, Cynthia is really upbeat, optimistic and cheerful. She's always laughing and giggling and prancing about the battlefield, boasting that she is a hero of justice and all evildoers shall fall before her as she enters the fray in a shower of petals and feathers. I mean, talk about dramatic. Cynthia is practically bursting with charm and character. I mean, she has some of the funniest support conversation in the entire game, and she's downright adorable, despite being rather naive and very clumsy. But then again, she is Sumya's daughter, so that's to be expected. On the gameplay front, Cynthia was one hell of a Pegasus Knight. Her level of speed and skill was absolutely insane compared to most of the other units. She has so much luck it was impossible for her not to get a critical hit. Not to mention that because of her good magic stat, she was the first Dark Flyer I had in Fire Emblem, and the first unit to receive the skill Gale Force. As if Cynthia wasn't strong enough already, this skill turned Cynthia into a goddamn petal-spewing Seeker missile. In fact, in one playthrough, I made Cynthia an assassin to capitalize on her speed stat, and by level 5 her speed was at 50. Yeah, that's right, 50. Cynthia wasn't poor for her since she still suffered from having low defenses, not to mention raising her weapon levels for her magic when she became a Dark Flyer was a pain in the ass. But the worst of it was trying to recruit her. Cynthia was a pain in the ass to recruit. She was near the front lines at the beginning of the chapter. She would always attack one of my units and end up dying as a result, unless I moved the units far enough out of range, which limited me on what I could do, or how I could spread out my team to deal with the other units. When the world is filled with turmoil and sorrow, sometimes we need an upbeat, gallant hero to remind us not to give up, to always look to the future. And Cynthia was just the hero we needed. Even in the hardships she faced in the future, she was the only child that kept on smiling and keeping people's hopes up. Well, not the only one, actually. So yeah, there is one character from Fire Emblem Awakening who's just as upbeat and cheerful as Cynthia, while at the same time boasting that he is the ultimate hero, a true warrior of justice and freedom. In fact, I was talking to him earlier discussing how I would build up his intro so he could have a dramatic reveal, but this guy insisted on doing it alone. In fact, he said, and I quote, "Owain needs no aid." This guy! Just like with Cynthia, Owain has to be one of the funniest and most entertaining characters in Fire Emblem, period. Every line of dialogue that spews out from this guy's mouth is just pure gold, filled with over-the-top war cries, long-winded heroic speeches, as well as clever references and nods to other Fire Emblem games. I can listen to Owain hours on end as he goes about mopping up the battlefield while spewing some of the greatest lines in Fire Emblem series, with intense amounts of theatrical prowess. That's not to say Owain is just a mere jester, as his support conversations not only show how funny he is, but also how much losing his loved ones affected him, and why he acts the way he does, which shows that there is a lot more depth to Owain. Not to mention he is possibly one of my favourite support conversations with Cynthia. Listening to them discuss what it means to be a true hero, as well as how to make the most intense and dramatic entrance of all time, man, I ship these two so hard. On the gameplay front, Owain isn't the strongest of all the children, but he's still very useful, and is the easiest unit to recruit and train. Being a sword master, Owain has a lot of skill and speed, as well as good strength, but because he's the son of Lisa, he actually has really good resistance stats, which is one area most sword masters lack. Not to mention, he can learn some really awesome abilities like Astra and Lethality. Adding to this is that it's really easy to recruit and train Owain, since when all the side stories are available on the world map, Owain chapter is the one you don't need to grind levels in order to at least tackle it, unlike pretty much every other child, making him a viable and potent asset to the team from a very early stage. Owain is certainly a colourful and vibrant character. Both him and Cynthia are a ton of fun to listen to and help lighten the mood of this game in its more darker moments. Even though Owain may not be the strongest unit in the game, he's still a valuable asset to the team, and his sword arm won't rest until the bloodlust has been quenched once and for all. By the way dude, You might want to get that checked out. One thing I've noticed about Fire Emblem in general is that a lot of Swordmaster characters have the whole pretty boy warrior persona going for them. Now, to be honest, a lot of characters of Fire Emblem are like this. I mean, just look at characters like Marth and Soph. But I find this type of character is more common amongst the Swordmasters. I mean, think about it. Sacred Stones had the smooth talking, gambling man and all-around lady killer Joshua, and Path of Radiance had the proud, honourable and dream-like Xerath. By that logic, the Swordmaster in Awakening should be another pretty boy, right? Oh, what are you with that simple? One of the more interesting and deeper characters in Awakening, Lanka is a stern-faced lethal swordmaster whose skills are second to none and isn't scared of anything. Except for women. Yeah, that's right. Despite being a swordmaster, Lanka is absolutely terrified of women. For the most part, he can't even stand in the same room as them, let alone fight alongside them or engage in any sort of conversation. This may seem like nothing more than a simple character bug, but his support conversations dive into his backstory, displaying that he was at one point in love with someone, and they led a very happy and peaceful life together. Until one day, bandits attacked them, and he couldn't save her. Ever since, he doesn't want to be close to any other woman, for fear of falling in love again and going through the same torment and loss. Lanka is a very interesting character, and has some really good support conversations, diving into his backstory by having the other characters aid him in overcoming his fear and helping him to let go of the past so that he can learn to love once again. Not only is Lanka a great character, but he is also one badass swordmaster. I ranked him as the #1 swordmaster in Fire Emblem for a reason. Lanka has an insane amount of both speed and skill, and dodged pretty much every attack ever thrown at him. Because of this, not only could Lanka easily deal with almost any enemy, but he was also really good at holding down points and blocking entrances, since even though his defense is low, the enemy pretty much could never land a hit on him, making his poor defense a complete non-issue. Not to mention that when he upgraded to a Swordmaster, alert Astra, it didn't matter what he faced or what level the unit was, nothing remained standing after facing him head on. They say you can't judge a book by its cover, and that's exactly the case with Lanka, since he may look like a stone cold stick in the mud, but dig a little deeper and take the time out to understand and learn about him, and you'll see just how great of a character he really is. Fire Emblem games always follow the same formula that has been established since the beginning and expanded upon. However, each game does have its own unique gimmicks to make it stand out and prevent the series from becoming stale. Most of the time that gimmick is in the form of a class or character that is specifically made for that game. Often this character is central to the storyline and is a very different class compared to the other units in the game. Examples of this are both Ninia and Nils in Fire Emblem 7, the Lagoon species in Path of Radiance, and to a lesser extent Micaiah from Radiant Dawn. Awakening is the Fire Emblem game with the most amount of gimmicks, and in terms of having a unique character, this guy and girl really did tip the scales. I swear this joke is never gonna end. The Avatar, or Robin as he's known canonically, is Awakening's exclusive tactician class. The main gimmick with the tactician class is that they have access to both swords and magic. Because of this, Robin is probably the most versatile fighter in any Fire Emblem game, since you have access to both long and short range attacks and can take advantage of both weapon triangles. Not to mention you can cater to maxing out even magical sword skills, or having a nice even split. Robin has pretty much all bases covered. This may seem like Robin is really overpowered, but I find that Robin is a much more consistent character compared to most, since his stats are very well balanced out, but they don't specifically cater to one particular weapon type like most other classes do. Because of this, Robin isn't nearly as strong as other swordmasters or sages, but at the same time he doesn't have any of their glaring weaknesses. And you know what? I really like this. Being able to use both swords and magic and having a very well balanced stats allows Robin to adapt to pretty much any situation without fear of being completely destroyed or dominated by a particular class. This makes Robin essential for every stage of the game, in order to make sure you're always one step ahead of the enemy and never find yourself in a dead end. When discussing Robin as a character, even though he's meant to be an avatar for the player to insert themselves, he is without question an established character with a personality and a backstory, rather than a blank slate. Also, I've only played through the game as male Robin, so I'm going to look at it from this perspective, since I've heard the female Robin is quite different. From the get-go, Robin starts off as a very mysterious character, as he's found lying in the fields on his own, with no memory whatsoever. After befriending both Chrom and Lisa, he quickly became a close and loyal friend, who was always there to have Chrom's back at every turn, get the team out of every predicament they faced. Robin's personality is that of someone who everyone can warm up to, since he's very friendly and understanding, while at the same time being rather stern and blunt when necessary. He's the type of person everyone can rely on to help them out or be there when they really need him. As such, Robin is able to support with every character in the game, and while not all his supports are great, some of them are really something special, expanding on both his character and who he's supporting with, which shows just how much Robin means to everyone. With all the praise I've given him, you'd think I'd put Robin higher, but since I've only seen one side of the character, I feel it's unfair to place him any higher until I've fully experienced what Robin is like from both perspectives. Despite this, Robin is definitely a welcome addition to the series, and I hope the Tactician class returns in future installments. I mean, who else is going to tip the scales? Like I mentioned previously, Fire Emblem Awakening gave you access to the Dark Mage class early on, and I've already talked about Henry in great detail, but Henry wasn't the first Dark Mage you were given in the game. This particular Dark Mage is more in line with your typical Fire Emblem Dark Mage, being cold, antisocial, obsessed with curses and hexes, grim, blood-crazed the works. And oh boy do I love her! Faja is the one character pretty much everyone mentioned when talking about the best Fire Emblem characters, for a damn good reason. Not only is Faja a terror on the battlefield and all around one of the strongest units in the game, but she's also one of the most entertaining characters in the game, which is saying a lot considering the competition, as well as being a very well developed and interesting character. And it's these traits that make Faja one of the most popular characters in the Fire Emblem series, for many, many reasons. Similar to Henry, Faja wasn't that great using normal tones for the most part, since she had low skill and speed, often leading to her outright missing her opponents early on, as well as having really crappy luck at times. But when using dark tones, Faja became a complete monster, since her damage output was right up there, and that she had surprisingly high levels of both defense and resistance, meaning she could shrug off magic attacks like they were nothing, and was surprisingly tanky when taking physical hits. Because of this, pairing her with Nosferatu was all she needed, since she could recover any damage she had received and drain huge amounts of enemy health with her attack, which was further increased with the skill Vengeance. Most of the time, you could put Faja in the front lines in the center of the enemies, and she'd be perfectly fine. Faja's personality is that of someone who's completely cold and bitter to pretty much everyone around her, refusing to let them get close to her, and threatening to curse them if they try anything funny. So yeah, she doesn't seem like a very nice character. That completely changes when she has support conversations with Robin and her daughter Neora. When Robin supports with Faja, she quickly becomes a highly obsessive stalker that watches your every move and does anything that you say, even go as far as to completely change her personality and make you pie. Seriously, what is it with this game and pie? At first it seems rather creepy, but Robin soon faints from exhaustion, and Faja nurses him back to health, as she knew exactly what needed to be done in order to make him better, showing that Faja really does care for people. With Neori's support, she's able to understand that her future self didn't treat Neori properly, and that she should focus more on being more motherly when she eventually gives birth, even going so far as to tell Neori that she does love her despite what her future self made Neori endure. It was these support conversations that really did shine light on Faja and prove that she's more than just a sexy stick in the mud. As such, Faja is currently one of the 2 female characters in Awakening that I have decided to marry, and it's a decision I didn't regret in the slightest, even if she did threaten to kill me in my sleep if I left her. But hey, marriage is no picnic, right? The main theme around Fire Emblem Awakening is the idea of predestination versus free will. This is shown through the fact that the children of some of the characters in the game travel back in time from the future in order to change the events of the past and ensure a brighter and better future. The thing is, recruiting the children and finding out the story is completely optional, since you don't have to complete their chapters to progress with the game. You can go through Awakening without seeing any of the future children. This is except for one character who is mandatory to recruit and is a key essential element of the game's story. That, everyone, is the one and only Moth! Wait, what? What do you mean it's not Moth? Well then, who is this guy? Who the fuck is Lucina? Sorry guys, got kinda lost there. Anyway, yes, that's right, Lucina is only second on this list, which is a dead giveaway to who's number 1, but we'll get there when we'll get there. Lucina is one of my favourite lords in Fire Emblem, period. Not only is Lucina a very well developed, interesting, enjoyable, and sympathetic character, but she's also a badass on the battlefield and truly embodies everything that makes a Lord class special in Fire Emblem. The story behind Lucina is that she is Chrom's daughter, and after her father is killed in the future, and the world becomes a hellhole, she travels back in time under the disguise of Mark, in order to change the events of the past without messing up with the timeline too much. Throughout the game, Lucina had to face many hardships and turmoil, being reunited with her dead mother and father, going into despair whenever she failed to change key events in the past, and having to kill Robin in order to save Chrom. Lucina gets put through so much shit, but even then she always keeps on pressing forward, not letting life get the better of her, and refusing to give up hope. Because of this, I find Lucina to be very admirable, as I feel she is a true Lord of Fire Emblem, as she encompasses the best parts of previous lords like Lyn, Ike, and Aleewood, while at the same time being able to stand on her own 2 feet and hold her own. In terms of gameplay, Lucina was close to a god in Awakening. By the time I had recruited Lucina, my team was already into their advanced form, while Lucina was only at level 10. But even still, she was more than capable of holding her own against units that were higher level than her, and she had so many awesome skills at her disposal that no one unit could get the better of her. In fact, Lucina was the only unit in Awakening that I could send to the battlefield by herself without any support, and she'd be fine no matter what enemy attacked her. Lucina truly deserves the title of a Lord, as her personality, backstory, and actions encompass what Lords in Fire Emblem should be. She is one of the best characters in the entire game. But she isn't the best. Look, you guys all saw this coming from a mile away, so let's not beat around the bush here. The best character in Fire Emblem Awakening is Soumya. Never have I seen a more underappreciated and unnecessarily hated character than Soumya. People have gone on record saying that Soumya is either stupid, boring, generic, weak, useless, or just plain terrible. All I can say to that is that you people are out of your goddamn mind! Because I absolutely love Soumya, in every sense of the word. Soumya isn't the deepest and most developed character. She's not the strongest unit in the game. She isn't 100% crucial to the plot. But what does that matter when Soumya is still an incredibly potent and powerful unit, not to mention being the best Pegasus Knight in Fire Emblem, as well as being such a fun, enjoyable, interesting, and lovable character. Gameplay-wise, Soumya kicks an ungodly amount of ass. Even though Pegasus Knights are weak starting out, she was more than capable of holding her own against any enemy she faced, and as she became stronger and stronger, she was an essential key to victory, and the one unit that was with me in every chapter. Not only was Soumya able to kill units with ease, she was also great at blocking entrances. Since magic did absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, to her, she even dodged snipers with relative ease. No enemy was worthy of laying a finger on Soumya. The best part was that whenever Soumya and my unit were paired up, we became a force of nature, since Soumya could go across the battlefield with ease, being able to heal other units as well as take down any sword fighters and mages. And when she switched over to me, I was able to deal with any Wyvern Lords, warriors, and snipers. So yeah, Soumya was an awesome unit on the battlefield, but that doesn't mean shit compared to how much I love Soumya as a character. Sure, Soumya is a bit of a klutz, and rather naive at times, but it doesn't change the fact that she's kind-hearted, strong, funny, caring, brave. Soumya is just beautiful, and this beauty is reflected between the support conversations between Soumya and my unit, not her support conversation with Chrom. Seriously, what were they thinking? Fucking pie of all things! The support conversation between myself and Soumya delved into Soumya's need to read books as a way of escaping from reality and running away from her problems, even going so far as to become the characters in the books, and only by supporting each other could we overcome these problems together, and show Soumya that she's perfect just the way she is. And by the end, Soumya didn't need to read books anymore, as we fell in love and had each other, almost like it was a fairy tale, and that we would live happily ever after. Even on my second and fourth playthroughs of Awakening, I married Soumya time and time again, just to experience the support conversations once again. It's like we did 83 Rebirth said. Role models come into our life to teach us something that we must learn. And to me, Soumya was just that. She showed me that running away from your problems doesn't solve anything, and that people always have flaws to them. But you can always count on the ones you love to help you through, and thus live happily ever after. I know this may sound extremely corny and sappy, but that's honestly how I feel. Soumya is not only the greatest character in Fire Emblem Awakening, she is the greatest character in Fire Emblem history. This has been CRASHX500's. I wish you guys a great night, take care, and for saving this beloved franchise, becoming the best RPG I've ever played, and creating some of the most beautiful characters ever, all I have to say is, thank you Fire Emblem Awakening, thank you.